Senator, are Republicans going too far in some of these various states?
You know what's sick is have the president of the United States to play the race card continuously in such a hypocritical way. He said the filibuster was a relic of the Jim Crow era. Well, he made an hour speech when he was a senator suggesting the filibuster was the best thing for the Senate to make it different than the House. This is a letter signed by 61 senators in 2017 when we had the House, the Senate, and the White House, 27 Democrats saying, please keep in place the filibuster. What's sick is H.R. 1. Federalizing state elections. In our Constitution, states supposed to run elections. H.R. 1 is the biggest power grab in the history of the country. It institutionalizes ballot harvesting. It does away with the voter ID requirement. It will take over every election in every state. It makes the Federal Election Commission a partisan commission. It will no longer be bipartisan. So that's the power grab we're standing up to my friends in Georgia. They had the highest turnout in the history of Georgia. We had 150-something million people vote. So every time a Republican does anything, we're a racist. If you're a white conservative, you're a racist. If you're a black Republican, you're either a prop or Uncle Tom. They use the racism card to advance a liberal agenda, and we're tired of it. H.R. 1 is sick, not what they're doing in Georgia.
All right, well, let's take a look at some of the provisions in Georgia, and these are specific ones that a lot of people are having heartburn about, Senator. It would limit the number and location of drop boxes. It allows counties to cut off early voting at 5 p.m. before a lot of working people get off and could go vote. And this is the one that I think is creating the biggest fuss. It prohibits, it makes it a crime to give food or drink to voters waiting in line. Senator, why on earth, if Americans are willing to wait in hours to vote, would you make it a crime for people to come and give them a bottle of water?
Well, all I can say is that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I agree with you there. But in Georgia, you had an explosion of mail-in balloting. The Carter-Baker Commission in 2005 looked at our election system that they had two warnings for us. Absentee mail voting is ripe for fraud, and ballot harvesting, where an individual can collect ballots on behalf of other people, is a threat to democracy as we know it. Both of those provisions are in H.R. 1. So if you don't like what they're doing in Georgia, you can go to court and stop them. But what they're doing with H.R. 1 is destroying the ability of any state to run elections, doing away with voter ID, changing the Federal Election Commission to make it partisan, and institutionalizing national ballot harvesting, which would be a disaster to our elections.
When even Lindsey Graham, one of the most Trump-aligned senators in Congress, can't figure out how to explain away this Republican law in Georgia making it illegal to give those waiting in line food or water, you might have just gone too far. The bill at the heart of this is SB 202, which was passed by the Republican legislature in Georgia and signed into law by Governor Kemp. And the bill has a number of insidious provisions, including limiting the number, location, and access to secure drop boxes, applying voter ID laws to mail-in ballots, removing the Secretary of State as the chair of the state election board so that the Republican-led legislature could appoint their own appointee, meaning they'll have appointed 3 members of the 5-member board, and allowing lawmakers the process to temporarily take over elections offices. The same party that tried and failed to overturn the election in 2020 is now creating the infrastructure to be able to do it and succeed the next time. But the provision that's garnered the most attention is the fact that it's now illegal to give food or water to those waiting in line to vote. And of course, when the Democrats point out that it is so brazenly, obviously, egregiously racist, Republicans will push back with, well, anything Democrats don't agree with is racist. But here's why it is actually provably racist. The average wait time at polling places in Georgia after 7 p.m. was 8 times longer at precincts that were 90% non-white versus 90% white. Some of those lines stretched as long as 11 hours. And so knowing the racial disparity in wait times for whites versus non-whites, let's think about who might be most impacted by a ban on giving people water. This isn't rocket science. The point is a systematic targeting of people of color to prevent them from voting. If the long lines don't stop you, they're hoping you'll just faint from dehydration instead. It's telling too that when given the chance to defend this, all Lindsey Graham can manage to do is pivot as quickly as possible to the idea of fraud. He says that there's been an explosion of mail-in balloting and points to a study from over 15 years ago stating that mail-in balloting will lead to fraud. Only, while it's all well and good that Graham can cite some 2-decade-old hypothesis, there's been no widespread fraud. Investigators who audited the signatures on more than 15,000 absentee ballot envelopes in one Georgia county found, quote, no fraudulent absentee ballots according to the audit report. Even Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger said, quote, this audit disproves the only credible allegations the Trump campaign had against the strength of Georgia's signature match process. So forget about widespread fraud. In Georgia, they couldn't find a single instance when they investigated this very issue. So when Lindsey Graham points to possible voter fraud as pushback to a law depriving people of getting water, this is a solution to an imaginary problem. Think about it. Notice that none of these Republicans who shriek about widespread voter fraud can actually point to any widespread voter fraud. It's always just the threat of voter fraud, the possibility of voter fraud. We've been voting by mail in this country since the Civil War. It is 2021. Every year it's the same fear-mongering without any actual proof to back it up. Consider too, even with the record mail voting this last election cycle, still Republicans overperformed expectations. They actually gained seats in the House. They hung on to almost every swing seat in the Senate. They didn't lose any state legislatures. If vote by mail is some Democratic tool to steal elections, why didn't they? It's because that excuse has zero basis in reality. And as for banning water, honestly, what's the rationale here? That it's electioneering? That you're gonna influence someone's vote because you handed them a drink? That someone waited online for hours, yet they were still undecided until the moment you gave them a sip of water, and now suddenly they're gonna go and vote for the candidate on your t-shirt? Give me a break. This is the United States. Handing someone who's thirsty a drink of water shouldn't be illegal anywhere, period. That the Republicans have to stoop to this level, making it illegal to give someone water, is a testament to just how afraid they are that people might actually be able to vote. And so instead of, oh, I don't know, actually trying to convince people to vote for you on the merits, they'd rather traffic in behavior that is just the peak of desperation. Let's just call this what it is. Republicans know that if more people vote, they lose. It is as simple as that. And so the goal is to make it as difficult as possible, to enact barriers and make it uncomfortable and limit its availability. Even just the threat of punishment because of vague laws is enough to dissuade people from voting. And that's the point. They know that they can't win on their agenda, their ideas, their policies, and so instead of winning over any voters, they'd rather just try and disenfranchise them. But sure, these are the constitutionalists, the patriots. Got it. So if Republicans want to pass the most draconian laws possible, if they want to pass laws so egregious so as to make sure everyone's paying attention, so be it. Because now, in an election cycle that history would tell us would otherwise be beneficial to Republicans, you have an entire Democratic base that's paying attention, that is intent on making sure they turn out every person possible. And they will wait however long it takes to cast their ballots, because now they know exactly the character of the party they're voting against. Congratulations, Republicans, you just gave everyone the perfect reason to show up to the polls. To see more videos like this, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and click the notification bell. And please subscribe to my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, where I not only break down the biggest stories of the week, but I also interview major players in the world of politics, including Vice President Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Warren, Nancy Pelosi, Katie Porter, Pete Buttigieg, Cory Booker, Jamie Raskin, and many more. Again, that's No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, available anywhere you listen to podcasts.